Frozen 2 is the latest animated film to come out that could potentially get my channel in trouble, because if I talk about anything that's a cartoon or put cartoons in the thumbnail of my videos starting on January 1st of 2020, that means that the FTC could give me a $42,000 fine, because technically my video is made for children, even though my general audience is really anyone who wants to watch a movie review. I'm not specifically aiming it at any certain demographic like children per se, but just because I'm talking about an animated film, I could be talking about any kind of animation like BoJack Horseman, Family Guy, or Frozen. It still counts as made for kids apparently, because it's an animated thing. And it needs to be stopped. Someone click on the links below. FTC and COPPA, please help out. Please. This is of course the sequel to the surprisingly successful first film that came out in 2013. It takes place a little while after that first film. Elsa is now Queen of Arendelle, Anna and Kristoff are in a happy relationship, and Olaf is being goofy Olaf. They're a big happy family together, but Elsa starts to hear voices coming from this forest, this magical forest that is separated by a bunch of fog and mist. They can't get in, but once they travel there to seek out these voices to stop any dangers from happening to Arendelle, the forest lets them in to uncover whatever secrets lies ahead. I really love the first Frozen movie. I think it's really great, despite everyone of course seeing how much money it made and then of course changing their opinions to, well, it's overrated. I still think it's a great movie, and I think it deserved all the success that it has gotten. Of course, because of that success, we have gotten a short in front of the Cinderella movie, Frozen Fever, and then we got a 22-minute TV special that they decided to put in front of Coco for some reason. That was a horrible idea and would only taint people's memories of that TV event, but they did it anyways, so I mean, good for them. The point is that this franchise has been growing for quite a while now. It was only inevitable with the critical success, the financial success, the merchandising success of this franchise that we would get a sequel at some point, and now we finally have it. We've had 6 years of waiting. And this is a kind of sequel that when it was announced initially, I was like, well, of course, they can't leave anything alone. But as I kind of started to think about it more, I was like, actually, there's a lot to this world that they could potentially explore, and we could see these characters progress even more, to get to know these characters on a more deeper level. So I was actually really excited to see a Frozen sequel. The marketing was incredible. Sometimes for animated films, even the good ones like a Pixar or Disney film, the marketing can be a little off and it can kind of paint a bad picture for it, but the marketing for this movie looked absolutely astonishing, and I was honestly in disbelief over it, because usually it isn't that good. Even the first Frozen movie, like the teaser and like the first trailer, weren't really that good for the movie, but it turned out great. So I went into this with high expectations, really high, to see where they could take this sequel. I was hearing a lot of great things beforehand, and unfortunately, I walked out of this movie very disappointed. This movie I found very middle of the road. And please let it be known, this has nothing to do with the audience I saw it with. I, of course, saw it with a lot of children in there. During the commercials and trailers before, they were constantly talking and screaming out loud certain things. And of course, when the movie starts, the quieting down only happens just a little bit. You can still hear kids talking throughout, and occasionally screaming things at the top of their lungs, not really like in a panic, but just they want to say something really loudly, so they will. And you know, in my aisle, and I'm sure other aisles, there are children getting out of their reclining chairs and just standing over like the handlebars looking over, so that the guy in front of them can like look up and be like, oh, there's a child right above me. What is going on? You have their legal guardians or babysitters or whatever talking to them too, trying to get them excited for the movie, but that only adds to the talking going on. The two women sitting next to me with a huge group of children acted like this was their home and just took off their shoes and just started to lounge about. It was like, this is a nightmare of an experience, but it has nothing to do with how I feel about this movie. It's completely separate. I can separate a bad movie-going experience with a movie that I just found okay. Let's talk about the things that are obviously good. The animation is, of course, drop dead gorgeous. They create some really fantastic images here with the character design and the worlds that you are seeing, and also the way they incorporate Elsa's powers and how she has not only grown with them, but also how they visually look. It's quite astonishing, to say the least. They do a lot of really creative stuff with her powers in this, visually, and just what it can do. So yes, another Disney movie managed to look visually fantastic. No surprise there at all. The voice acting is all fantastic. I don't think anyone was phoning it in or not really taking anything seriously. I thought they all did a really good job. They continue to impress me with all animated films. One of the things that I really find impressive is how the voice actors can transcend just standing in a booth by themselves. They can always sound like they're talking to each other. That's a thing that's always impressed me about animated films, and it continues here. Thank God. Everyone does a really fantastic job playing these characters, and it's fun to just see them again. This movie I found consistently pretty funny, mainly because of the Olaf character. I thought he did another great job. Josh Gad is a real delight playing this guy, and pretty much everything he said, I think maybe like one or two fell a little flat, but mostly the things he was saying I found pretty funny, and I thought they fit with what his character was. I know the big thing to hate on, besides the movie, is to hate on Olaf now. Everyone's saying, ever since that first movie, now he's annoying. I didn't really find that at all with this. I thought he was pretty in line with what he's always been. The musical score by Christoph Beck is really great. He does a really great job capturing the whimsy of this world and making you feel really enchanted by everything, and also just the original songs that they have. I'm not gonna be that guy that's like, well, none of them were as good as Let It Go or any of the other songs from the first movie, because although that's true, I think that's an unfair thing to compare, because those songs are so great that when you follow it up with the sequel, you really do have a high chance of not making your songs in this one as good as the previous one. So I'm not going to be that guy that's like unfairly saying none of them were as good as the other one, because that's a really hard thing to do, I can imagine. I will say though that I found all the songs here, I thought they were all pretty good. There's really only one song that belongs to a certain subplot, and the subplot itself is kind of bad, but at least there's a song there that I was like, okay, I can at least be entertained by a little bit. Idina Menzel has a fantastic voice. We got the funny Olaf song that works really well. Kristen Bell is still a great singer, which was a really big shock in the first movie, and it still kind of shocks me how great she is as a singer in this film as well. And Jonathan Groff, of course, is excellent. He's Jonathan Groff, for God's sake. He's super fantastic. So aside from all these obvious good things, voice acting and the animation and songs, how was the rest of the movie? Well, the first thing I can list off all the bat is not every character has a whole lot to do. The big one being Kristoff. His subplot is very sitcom level of, I want to propose to Anna, but she's either too distracted, doesn't get what I'm saying, or as soon as I start saying something, she's interpreting it a different way, so now I have to act all goofy and awkward, like, oh wait, I didn't mean to say that, blah, blah. And it has no reason to really be in the movie other than eventually, near the end, he finally asks, and there is basically no drama between them. So I just found his appearance in this film, although I do like Jonathan Groff as a voice actor in this film and as a singer, because his song in this is fantastic. He does a great job singing, as per usual, but the subplot surrounding it just doesn't really support it all that well, and I wish they could rewrite it so he had a little bit more to do, that there was more going on with him. Olaf also doesn't really have that much to do, but he's the funny character, so he kind of gets away with it. They do kind of mention in the beginning, he just kind of states like, how do you feel about the fear of growing more mature, and like just the fear of getting older, but they don't bring that back to him per se, and the characters that it does really happen to, it doesn't really seem like it affects them all that much either, so it's almost kind of a wasted thing there. He literally, as they start walking into this magical forest, he says something like, I really think that when we go in here, we might transform into completely different people. And it was just kind of like those really kind of lines, like I was just staring at it like, you gotta be kidding me, why'd he say this? It's like, it's kind of obvious going into the movie, like certain things are gonna change. I don't know why a character has to explicitly say it. They attempt to make it a joke near the end of the film, and I was like, it just didn't work the first time. And I don't really care now. Especially after watching this movie where I thought the major character changes, mainly just between Anna and Elsa, were very weak and didn't really feel supported that much by a strong narrative. And yes, they do change a bit, where in the first film they realize their love is stronger together, they shouldn't be hiding from each other. And in this film, it's, our love is so strong, maybe we can be doing different things while also staying in touch and being, loving each other. And it's not that strong a narrative. I can kind of see what they were going for, though, and that's one of the biggest disappointments of the movie, is that I can see what they were trying to do with this. There's an aspect of the subject matter here that I wasn't expecting them to include, like, at all, but they did, and I was like, okay, I mean, it's a kind of neat topic to have in an animated film for children. It's a good thing for them to learn, too, but it doesn't have a strong narrative backing it. It's a good idea, but the execution doesn't really work that well. Like, the main conflict of the movie is caused by a villain that is entirely in a flashback, we never get to know personally, and Anna and Elsa sort of know him just by being told who he is, but they don't know him personally either. There's no personal attachment to this guy at all. Just, oh, we recognize him from yada yada yada, and now we just gotta deal with these mistakes that we have no care for. And I couldn't really get invested in that at all. The main conflict of this movie, especially when it starts to get to the climax, feels very weightless. like they start talking it up really big, like this is some dire stuff that's going on. But then once it kicks into the climax, I was honestly surprised that we were in the third act, because everything was starting to wrap up so quickly. And the main drama, they dealt with it in a way that was just like, oh, that's all it took? Like this quickly too? Like, okay. Sure, I guess this is Frozen 2. It was bad enough that my only flaw, like the first 20 minutes or so of the movie, was that they kind of breezed by the certain thing that kicked off the adventure. They kind of breezed by. That was like my only issue for a while. But as the movie continued, just certain things became more apparent, like the Kristoff storyline, like how the narrative wasn't really that strong. And these two groups of people that we meet in the forest, they give them a backstory that you're supposed to be like, oh, how sad for them. They have obvious lines of dialogue where they're like, some of us have never seen the sky or whatever. And it's like, oh, you're supposed to feel bad for these guys and what's happened to them. But I don't know any of them personally. We don't really get to know any of them. They give us like a minute of seeing our 5 lead characters interacting with their group, but then they kind of move on quickly, like, okay, we got to get some action going, we got to get the adventure going again. So we don't have really any time to get to know them other than feel bad they had some troubled things going on in the past. But even then, once you actually know, once you like realize like, hey, the thing that was happening to them in the past, how are they like so cool with each other right now, these two groups? Like they act like they were against each other when we first reintroduced them, but now they're okay with each other, or they never were, or they just, I don't know. They kind of rush over all the dynamics. And Sterling K. Brown, who is kind of a rising star, he's been in a ton of stuff lately. He has like nothing to really do in this other than be a voice. His character, I thought because they had him, maybe his character would have more importance, but his character just feels so there. And that's kind of it. We find out a certain twist involving Anna and Elsa and these two groups. And once they revealed it, I was just like, I have no interest and we have no development with these groups other than they just showed up randomly and now they're in the movie, not really doing much else to help it out or grow it more personal or anything like that. So overall, despite the animation looking great as per usual, the voice acting is great. It was fun to see these characters again in that sense that I just recognized them from the first movie and I had so much fun with them. It was great to see them again interact with each other. The songs are great despite none of them being as good as anything from the original soundtrack. I don't really care. They did a good job with the songs in this one, the musical score by Christoph Beck. There's a lot to like about this movie, especially how funny it can be with the Olaf character, but unfortunately I just found this as a sequel surprisingly middle of the road. The things they reveal about Anna and Elsa are just kind of like, oh, okay. And you're just kind of like, all right, I have no investment with what's going on because you just introduced it and you're not giving us any time to get to know any of these people involved. But sure, I guess that's development for them. And I was so baffled walking out of the movie. I was like, what is it that's bothering me so much about this movie? And I figured it out on the drive home. It was that it was essentially a straight-to-DVD story that was then made theatrically and released in theaters. That's what was bugging me the whole time. I was like, this is why certain things just feel very weak as far as development goes. It doesn't feel like it's really well written. It feels underwritten in a lot of ways. It doesn't feel like it has this strong narrative to make a great sequel. It just feels like they came up with something really quick and they just released it straight to DVD. But instead they put it in the theater. I was so bad. I thought the straight-to-DVD sequel days of Disney were done, but apparently not, because they made one and then released it in theaters. Ralph Breaks the Internet came out last year, and it's a sequel that isn't like your traditional kind of sequel because there's no villain in that movie. It's really just an internal struggle with Ralph himself and kind of having to fight his own personal issues. I thought they made a really great movie out of that. I thought, you know what, this isn't like a traditional Disney sequel. It's not better than Wreck-It Ralph 1, but I do like the approach they made here, and I can at least say I left satisfied with the character growth that we have seen. Frozen 2, they don't really have a villain. It's just Anna and Elsa fighting the mistakes of someone that they barely know, like probably don't even know at all, just they know his name. And they learn some minor things that explain certain things, but it doesn't really feel like it leaves that much of an impact on these characters. It doesn't feel like they're growing much other than, hey, we love each other as sisters, and that's it. And it just felt really disappointing overall. It's one of those movies that maybe should have had a villain. Maybe they should have had better characters to support the narrative. Maybe they should have reworked certain things. Maybe, I know the original team was involved with this, which is great, but maybe they needed some new people to come in and offer a different perspective on what this story should be. and offer some new kind of vision or voice. I'm gonna give Frozen 2 a C+. I can't hate this movie because of the things I mentioned. There's just a lot of good things to like about this. But overall, as a movie, I was anticipating really greatly because of how great the marketing was and how much I loved that first movie. I just felt very bitter over it overall because it had let me down in ways that I didn't think they actually could, because they captured something really magical with that first movie, and this is exactly what I was sort of afraid how the first movie would turn out, just okay. And now we have Frozen 2, which I thought would be great going in, and now it's just okay. And the ending just really didn't leave me all that satisfied. They leave you in a place that's like, okay, yay for these characters, I guess, but I don't really care. Honestly, I thought I needed Frozen 2, but now that we have Frozen 2, I'll just stick with the first one. I'll just act like the first one's just its own thing. They never made any sequels or anything, just that one. But if you've seen Frozen 2, leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.